We're about to get into some of my favorite topics when it comes to guitar techniques, and that's timing and feel. Timing and feel are some of those things that I feel like separate a musician from just a guitar player. Someone who can actually take the instrument and make music with it, rather than just playing all their favorite songs or solos. It just comes down to being able to pick up the guitar and then just play something, you know what I mean? And in my opinion, two of the most important techniques in order to do that are timing and feel. So let's talk about timing for a second. I could sit here all day and talk to you about timing, but for the interest of time, when it comes to timing, what I will tell you is that you really want to make that a priority. Okay, make it something that is very important that you practice. So if you ever practice guitar, or if you intend to, let's say, get back into practicing guitar, just as important, if not more important, than doing your finger exercises and that kind of stuff, is you want to practice your timing. As far as what that can entail, obviously it's a variety of things, but you want to make sure that you have precise timing with everything that you play, from single notes to chords and a progression, that kind of thing. But the other side of it, it's about being able to just set the timing yourself, like what I did in the beginning of that video where it was just me playing, right? So I had to be essentially my own drummer, keeping time and having a good, basically a rhythmic navigation, you could say, through whatever it is I was playing. So I wanted to try and keep time as I was going through. And one thing that actually really helped me build that technique was actually a lot of acoustic guitar playing. Because when you're playing acoustic, a lot of times you're playing acoustic by yourself. And if you're singing, I'm not a singer, but if it's like, if you sing and play acoustic, you know, you're the one man or one woman band, right? So you want to make sure that you're keeping timing. You're covering a lot of ground. If you're going to be a one-man band, you're not just a free-form, you know, just like a jazz kind of performer, I'd imagine, right? Maybe you are, but most of us aren't. So it's like, you want to be able to actually keep time. You don't want to be free-flowing as far as time. You want to be steady and consistent with it. So one of the best pieces of advice that I got when it came to the picking hand, right? When it comes to playing guitar, and it was especially important when playing acoustic guitar, is to literally pretend that your right hand is a drummer. So when you're focusing on not just keeping time and keeping beat, but also just like the pulse, like just the same thing that you kind of feel when there's a drummer present. You want to try to emulate as much of that as you physically can, right, on guitar. And one of the ways that was revealed to me was really pretending that your bottom strings here, the low E, A, and D strings, are your kick drum, and your top strings, G, B, and high E, are your snare. Right? So if you have those two necessary components, right, you know, you can go boots and cats and boots and cats, right? Essentially with your guitar. You mute your strings and you get into this, you know, like feel of like boots, cats, boots, cats, boots and cats and boots and cats. You're getting used to that, you know, that the timbre of like, you have that low thump with the kick drum, and then you have that high like slap of the snare, right? So you're applying that essentially to your guitar playing. And it doesn't matter what you're playing, you can keep time like that. Of course, if you're playing rhythm and you're playing really chordy stuff, that can really help. But for now, let's just mute the strings and practice this out, right? Going like boots and cats and boots and cats and boots and cats. Just doing that, right? So doing kick, snare, kick, snare. And if you wanted to do something like a little more elaborate as a kick drum pattern or like a drum pattern, let's say like kick, kick, snare, right? Boom, boom, clap, something like that. So we can go like this, 2, 3, 4. So we're establishing a beat together, right? Now, if I were to actually play something, I'll just pick some random chords to play. Let's say like, and right there, it's like I can just go back and forth between those two chords all day long, keep that beat going, and I'm really feeling the rhythm, you know? And this is something that, you know, it is actually helpful to practice it to a metronome just to really, you know, get you precise with that timing. But after a while, you want to have this internal clock that may not be 100% perfect, like robotically perfect, right? But at least enough to like get you feeling it, right? Where you're actually kind of bobbing with what you're doing. Like getting your whole body into it really helps when it comes to timing. It's almost like a dance, you know? And I'm speaking as someone who can't dance. I put all of my potential as a dancer into guitar when it comes to keeping rhythm, you know? And something that simple is what I highly recommend you start with. A simple drum pattern, right? And just a simple series of chords. So let's just take 2 chords, for example. It doesn't have to be G and A minor. It can be like, I don't know, let's say like C and G, right? So we can do like, so it's like, you just play the chords and then you have like the low strings, right, as your kick drum and the high strings as your snare. And then if you want to make, again, a more elaborate drum pattern, you know. And that's actually a fun way to practice new musical ideas if you want to write a song. You know, for me, I love starting with the beat. You know, I take kind of the James Brown approach when it comes to songwriting. It's like starting from the ground up, from the beat, you know. Once I hear a beat, it really jogs everything else for me. That's my, you know, what I personally resonate with when I'm trying to come up with an idea is starting with the beat. So you can just start bare bones, muting your strings, finding a kick drum pattern. And again, it can be something busy or something real simple. But if this is something new for you, highly recommend starting simple and then just busying it up. You know, you can eventually do stuff like, but you can, even when I'm doing that, you can hear, I know I got like slapback delay and a lot of extra stuff on there, but hopefully you can still hear the kick and the snare. It's not like I'm just doing that across all 6 strings. I'm putting focus, like accenting, when I'm trying to hit the kick drum, I'm making sure to focus on those low strings and then those high strings for the snare, right? So if I'm doing, and if I want to pick 2 chords, I'll do something like this. So like right there, like I started with that idea and then I just kind of went with it. I just started adding chords to it that, you know, that was all off the cuff, you know, just taking, adding a couple extra chords in there, just trying it out and sort of feeling it, you know, but keeping that rhythm the entire time. So, and it doesn't just apply to rhythm playing. I mean, it's very important with rhythm playing, but you do want to have that sense of timing when you're soloing. So if let's say we were to just do a simple major pentatonic in G kind of thing, right? Like, so like that, you know, I wasn't necessarily being able to play the beat, but I still kept it going and I just kind of contained it within just those simple single notes and added that kind of percussive feel by muting it, right? A lot of the techniques that we've already covered really play into this. So you can think of this video as like a culmination kind of lesson, let's say, of just like applying all those little techniques like muting and the timing and like just being real percussive, the picking dynamics, all that stuff can really apply here. So you can really add this like new dimension to your playing just when you're playing by yourself. You know, I really geared this whole thing towards just playing by yourself because it starts with you, you know? And then once you go out there in the world and you go play with whatever musicians you already play with or that you're gonna play with down the line, it's like you're bringing that much more to the table. So it's really cool. Now, that's as far as timing goes, you know, can apply, like I said, to both rhythm and lead playing. But if we were to talk about feel, for example, feel is another thing that really you play into it by applying these other techniques that we've already covered. So when it comes to feel, you know, I know it's something that's kind of hard to define, but the way I think of it is like your ability to just communicate with guitar linguistics. I've used that term before. I use it a lot when describing ways of playing the guitar that make it seem vocal, like you're actually communicating, using it as a means of speech, right, with guitar. And there's certain techniques like vibrato, slides, bends, that kind of stuff. They all contribute to your overall sense of feel. And it really just comes down to your touch. So you can think of your fingers as the really controlling factor, and your picking hand, of course, right? Tone being in the hands, like I said, I'm a big believer in that. A lot of it is driven by your picking hand, right? Because you can get different tones by how your picking dynamics are. But it's also in your touch, because a lot of the guitar linguistics like vibrato and slides and that kind of stuff all come from the fretting hand. So when they work together with their powers combined, you create this like wonderful foundation of how you can apply literally anything. So if you were to sit there and someone's like, hey, just play me something, then you're like, all right, you just come up with a little beat, come up with 2 chords, let that start you off. And then even just thinking about it, I'm like, I can't help it. I'm just like moving. I'm like, the idea's already in my head. So it's like you get so used to that pretty much on demand, you can come up with something that would be, something that you otherwise would not have come up with had you not had that foundation of those skills. So to explore the feel side of things a little more, let's take a look at something more solo-y, right? So we're gonna stay in the key of G. I'm just gonna keep this idea of like the G, A minor kind of thing and that sort of beat. Kind of keep that going in my head, Sounds like it could be something, I don't know, it's very 90s sounding to me. So if I were to do something lead-wise, right? If I still had that beat in my head, and getting something started, So even like right there, that was all completely off the cuff. I was just, sticking with that. Like I still had that, I was still possessed by that beat and by that framework of those 2 chords, to where even after doing that little solo thing, I went straight back into playing the chords and it flowed, right? And as far as my feel on all these notes, it was simple, just focusing on bends, vibratos, that kind of thing, just having a confident touch. Because that really what it comes down to is confidence and the formula to achieving confidence that I've found. Because believe me, I was far from confident as a guitar player for a lot of years, even after having made some big accomplishments, and I still struggle with that. So I understand completely us as musicians, and especially guitar players, how we deal with that. But really what leads to confidence, honestly, is comfort. We want to be so comfortable with the way we play certain things that when we show up to play it, it's so like the back of our hand that we got it, no matter what, right? And in order to achieve comfort, right, what precedes that is really consistent practice, It all comes down to consistent practice. There's no shortcuts when it comes to guitar, and the big reason for that is because you have 2 schools of approach to guitar as a human being. You have your mental approach and your physical approach. Your physical approach is like, learning the fretboard, learning how to fret notes, how to do all the physical techniques. With any new physical technique, it's gonna take time to get comfortable with it, right? And with the mental side of things is like, that's where the creativity comes in, and being able to create this communication highway between your mind and your hands. Remember we were talking about like creating or like playing ideas on the fly, right? Like being able to compose an idea in your head and play it on guitar. That's just like the order of things. It's like it starts here and there's this trickle down sort of thing. You communicate it to your hands and your hands manifest it and bring it out. And that's that kind of like assembly line, let's say, of basically how it works, right? It's that kind of order. So when you think about that, it's like, okay, so it's all part of the process to get comfortable with the physical side of things and the mental side of things, and that just takes time. So it's all part of the process to take time, but what really minimizes that time is consistent practice. So think of the formula like this: consistent practice leads to comfort, which leads to confidence. That's really the only logical flow that I've found really works. There have been times where I would think I was confident about something, but when I crashed and burned, I'd look back and realize, I wasn't that really comfortable with it. I was taking too many risks and I wasn't keeping in line with what I truly knew, what I was comfortable with knowing. So I can tell you that through many, many mistakes, that formula, consistent practice leads to comfort, leads to confidence, is a tried and true 100% of the time, like that's how it goes sort of formula. So take it from me, having made a ton of mistakes over the years, I'm wanting to tell you as someone who is wise enough to take my advice and not let it apply to you in the sense that you learn things the hard way. Rather, you can bypass all that and get straight to the great result with that formula.